We turn to Psalm 27. And this is a very well-known psalm that covers a lot of topics. It speaks of repentance, of solid faith, of our blessed hope, yes, including a prophecy of the rapture, trouble from enemies, false witnesses, and violent men. It's a psalm that definitely has something for everyone. Let's begin by reading verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Like many psalms, this one too was written in a time of trouble. Yes, there is confidence and triumph. David was not in the darkness because the Lord was his light, even his salvation and strength. Although we live in a world of darkness, we should know that if our life is filled with the Lord, it is filled with light. In 1 John 1, it says, God is light. And Jesus, we know, is the light of the world. But David goes a step further. He doesn't say God is light. He says, He is my light. It must become personal. And he says he is my salvation. That means deliverance in the immediate and in eternity. Light and salvation, in Hebrew, Ovri and Yishi. There is no more clear reference to Jesus than this. Yeshua or Yehoshua, salvation from God, my salvation. And he is my strength, or fortress, stronghold. David was a warrior. Surely he had physical strength. But God gave strength to him. God was the strength of his life. Because physical strength means nothing against spiritual enemies. But Jesus' strength is above all spiritual wickedness in high places. His light drives out the darkness, and in his strength we can be strong. And so he says, of whom then shall I be afraid? It's a rhetorical question. When faith is strong, fear is gone. Paul said it this way in Romans 8 verse 31. What then shall we say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Again, also a rhetorical question, obviously. And the prophet Micah reflects David's words when he writes in Micah 7 verse 7 and 8, Therefore I will look unto the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall, I shall arise. And when I sit in darkness, the Lord shall be a light unto me. Let us stop trusting other men and our own wisdom, our experience, our friends, etc. There is a greater strength than all of these. David continues, verse 2. When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this I will be confident. What we read here are the words of a believer who speaks out of experience. David was battle-tested. He was not a believer like many of us who had only seen good weather, who lived and believed comfortably from his couch or safely in a secluded monastery. No, he knew God's goodness in the midst of war, from the battlefield. And in verse 2 he looks back on these past experiences, and then in verse 3 he looks to the future. Yes, even greater trials might come, but he can count on God. And he has no fear. Of that, he says, he is confident. Then verse 4. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. This is what it all boils down to. a deep desire to be in the presence of the Lord all the days. Ultimately, it is the one thing, he says this expressively, one thing that David desires of the Lord. This is the purpose, the one purpose that dominates David's prayer and life. And I've quoted this verse many times because this is really what our faith should boil down to, this desire. And David speaks about dwelling. It's not a visit, but it's permanent. Something that is perfect should never end, and it doesn't. David thinks of home. He calls it the house of the Lord and his temple. And in the following verses, he will call it his dwelling and his tabernacle, his pavilion. It is not a reflection of his love for the earthly construction, because obviously he could visit the physical tabernacle. No, this is a desire for the one who dwells there. And beyond that, a desire to be in his eternal home. He wanted both to behold God and to inquire, meaning to know more of God. So it's both meditation and practice. The heart that truly seeks God finds richness that many people never know. And it's amazing that David knew this under the Old Covenant. And at the same time, it is a shame that many under the New Covenant never know it. Nor is it for many the one thing that they truly desire above everything. Spurgeon wrote at only 20 years of age the following, reflecting this same desire. The highest science, the loftiest speculation, the mightiest philosophy, which can ever engage the attention of a child of God, is the name, the nature, the person, the work, the doings, and the existence of the great God, whom he calls his Father. David then continues, verse 5. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me upon a rock. When trouble comes, God does not necessarily remove or prevent them, but he will offer protection in the midst of it. Again, David speaks of pavilion and tabernacle. More than the earthly tent, that refers to the heavenly, eternal place. We can find protection there where our heart already resides, while still being in this world. And then we find ourselves not on shaky ground, but on solid rock. And of course we know that is Jesus. But in this verse we also see a prophecy of the rapture, which removes the church or the bride in the time of trouble and hides her in her heavenly home, where she will be with her groom, the rock. Notice that it says here, he shall hide me. This is different from what we read in verse 4, that he desires to dwell. That is being in the eternal home. This hiding is temporarily, dwelling is permanent. The hiding is only during the time of trouble. It's a temporal state for a while, until the time of trouble is over. And if we compare that with the words of Isaiah in Isaiah 26 verse 20, we see what it alludes to. It says there, come my people, enter thou into thy chambers, I would say mansions, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself as it were for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast, until the time of trouble has passed, is over. Verse 6. And now shall my heart be lifted up above my enemies, round about me. Therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing, I will sing praises unto the Lord. A head may hang down for fear or for shame, but the Christian should have neither of these. Instead, being on a high rock, he is lifted above his enemies. and think first and foremost of spiritual enemies. Instead of fear or shame, there is joy and praise. David would sing to the Lord while bringing sacrifices of joy. Our requests to the Lord are easily passionate because of our needs, but our thanksgiving should be equally passionate. We read about this also in Numbers 10, verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your month, you shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings. Verse 7 then. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice, have mercy also upon me, and answer me. When thou saidst, seek ye my face, my heart said unto thee, thy face, Lord, will I seek. Hide not thy face far from me, put not thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help. Leave me not, neither forsake me, O God of my salvation. When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. After all the joy and praise of the first half of this psalm, one might think that it was all okay with David. But he too felt sometimes that God did not hear him right away and had hidden his face. But God invites us, even in those moments, or especially in those moments, to seek him. He says here, seek my face. That means to actively approach him. Don't just sit back and wait and see what happens. Verse 9 shows anxiety to be heard. But he is also determined. Thy face, Lord, will I seek. And he reminds himself of God's past help. Thou hast been my help. And God never changes. Then David mentions his father and his mother, which doesn't happen too often. We know, of course, about Jesse, David's father, but about his mother we know very little. But he mentions her a few times throughout the Psalms. I've alluded to this before. And here he mentions again his father and mother. And the context here is that he knew that God's care and love goes beyond even the closest of human bonds. And it also relates to David. His parents had never forsaken him, but he was separated from them. And the reason for that was because he had sent them to Moab for protection, to actually take them out of harm's way. We read about that in 1 Samuel 22, verse 3 and 4. There it says, And David went thence to Mizpeh of Moab, and he said unto the king of Moab, Let my father and my mother, I pray thee, come forth and be with you, until I know what God will do for me. And he brought them before the king of Moab. And they dwelt with him all the while that David was in the hold. It's an interesting story of itself, of course, that we see that David put God first and did not want care and worries regarding his parents to be in the way of what God had for him. We continue then in verse 11 and 12. Teach me thy way, O Lord, and lead me in a plain path because of mine enemies. Deliver me not over unto the will of mine enemies. For false witnesses are arisen up against me, and such as breathe out cruelty. Teach me your way, he says. It is a recurring prayer of David throughout the Psalms. It is a prayer that should be on our lips too. It reflects the desire for true discipleship. Not my way, but your way, Lord. That is how I want to live. Then David asks to be led in an even path, plain, a level path. It's the same request we read in Psalm 26, verse 12. It's not necessarily an easy path, but it is level, it is even, it is secure. David did not ask for an easy life, but for a stable and secure place to stand against the difficulties and against enemies. And he mentions these enemies in verse 12 and their characteristics. And he continues then verse 13. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. It is faith that kept David going. Without faith, he would have fainted, given up, lost heart. Why? For the same reason we often feel that way when we look at the world around us. A hopeless, dark world, full of people without goal. They are walking dead, like zombies, godless and full of wickedness. We can say it is the land of the dying. But David thought of another land, his eternal home, the land of the living, where there is no death nor sorrow. That prospect kept him going. It encouraged him, as it does us. And David here confirms that he believes that what he desires in verse 4, to dwell in the house of the Lord, to behold his beauty. He believes that it will come to fruition. He says, I believe to see the goodness of the Lord. And then he concludes with verse 14, wait unto the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Here David extends his encouragement to you and to me. Literally, be of good courage. The instruction is to wait on the Lord. That is not passively sitting around, but active service, seeking him, trusting him, and on his strength, not ours. Do you feel weak? That means that you're trusting your own strength, which is actually weakness. Wait on the Lord, and he shall strengthen your heart. Isaiah wrote it this way, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Psalm 27 began by declaring that the Lord is the strength of my life. And it ends by telling us how that happens, by waiting on the Lord, by having our hearts already in the land of the living, the house of the Lord, his temple, his pavilion, his tabernacle. Wait on him and stand on the rock. Amen.